Welcome to That's Good Parenting. I'm your host, Dori Durbin. I'm a children's book illustrator and book coach and the podcaster of this show. And I help experts kid-size their expertise into kid books that families love. Today I'm joined by Jonathan Banning. Jonathan is a speaker and the author of the book, Who Are You Becoming? He's also a leader who has given more than 500 keynotes all over the world. He's here with us to share how parents can stress less, connect more, and raise those kids who thrive. Jonathan, I am so glad that you're here. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I love what you do and who you help. So I'm thrilled to be with you.
You know, it's funny, as parents, we have a lot of commonalities besides just your area of expertise. And I think one of the commonalities is that we have these experiences that lead us into kind of the next thing. So one of the things I really want our listeners to understand is who you are because of what you've experienced and why you're helping the group that you're helping.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had a few wake up calls in my life. I like to joke that Robert Frost gave me some really good advice, but he didn't give it to me. He died before I was born, but he wrote, how many things have to happen to you before something occurs to you? And I've had a lot of things happen to me. And I think gone out of my way to make sure nothing occurs to me in some of those processes. But one of the big ones, I was in a car accident early in my career. I was in my mid-20s, and I was doing work for some of the biggest companies on the planet. But I was in this car accident. 2 tractor trailers obliterated my car. Highway, warm day, cold night, black guys, car starts sliding. And every now and then we get wake up calls. And I don't tell the story because it's unique. It's not really. Everyone I know, everyone I've ever met has had some, and a lot of us get repeated wake up calls, and so often something happens, maybe a friend of ours, we find out, whatever, they're sick, they get cancer, and we get these wake up calls, and I didn't want to waste that wake up call. So after that happened, I started thinking, like, this could have easily been the end. One of the trucks hit my door. I watched it coming towards my door and leaned away, and then I'm unconscious, bam, and I just didn't want to waste it. So I started thinking, like, what do you do differently? And I realized that one of the most important questions in life is, who are you becoming? And I didn't spend almost any time or energy on that question. And I started thinking, like, a year from now, I'll be a better friend to my friends. I'll make more time for the things that really matter. I'll give less time and energy to the things that don't. I'll have more courage to say no to certain things or try things that, 10 years from now, you'll be looking back, wishing you would have done something, or you'll be so amazed and grateful that you did it. Right. And I started thinking, like, I need a way to become a better person, better friend, better. I wasn't a parent at that time, but now I am. I have 2 teenage daughters. It's a question and a half as a dad, who are you becoming? And then there's a version 2 of it that says, who are you helping the people around you to become? And I spent a lot of my life on those 2 questions. So yeah, but that was a wake up call, but we all get them. And the challenge is, like, what are you going to do with the next one?
That's so powerful. Even asking yourself almost daily, who are you becoming, it's almost like you have to, because it's so easy to get distracted by life or by the frustrations of the stress that's surrounding you, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. After that accident, and I wish I could say I changed a lot of things quickly, but the answer is no. But I started looking into, I was doing leadership work. I still do leadership work with companies all over the world and culture work. But I started really digging into the people that make progress, that close that gap between who they are and who they can be. And you can see it. You can see the improvements. I tried to figure out, what do they do? And I realized almost all of them had this incredibly simple process, but they actually kind of did it every day. Like, the expression, an apple a day, right? It's like, what will an apple a day do? It will affect your health, right? But if you ask 1,000 people, if you've ever, have you ever done an apple a day for a month? And if you ask 1,000 people, even if they are all in healthcare, only a few will say, yeah, I do that. So it's like, can I have a simple process that actually works? But, like, what does that look like concretely, Dori? I honestly did this. I started saying, Jonathan, you're not a good listener. Like, how do you practice listening every single day? And I thought, this is what I did. This is what I'm like, I was amazing at nodding people on. Have you ever done that? You're like, yeah. And they're talking and you're like, uh-huh, uh-huh. And you stopped listening 4 minutes ago and you're like, oh, yeah. So I decided the first person I met after 1 p.m., the first conversation I had, I'm like, I will practice listening. And I'll actually, like, at the end of it, go, how'd you do with that? And I started doing this. And I never forget, I was flying to Des Moines, Iowa for a keynote for the American Hospital Association in Des Moines, and an hour and 17-minute connecting flight, Chicago to Des Moines. I get on the plane and I'm like the first person, like whoever sits next to me on this plane, I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to engage in a meaningful conversation with them. I'm sitting there and this woman's walking down the aisle and she's talking to herself as she walks. And I started thinking, I hope it's not her. I hope it's not her. And of course she stops next to my seat, and she says, is this seat number whatever? And I'm like, no, but it was. And, and I'm thinking, this is the honest truth. I'm thinking, practice listening to someone else today. But then I'm like, no, right? This is what I do. This is what I decided with that who are you becoming question, right? Because we don't make progress on things accidentally. We make negative progress accidentally very easily. How do you get in bad shape? Well, you don't need to sit down and go, I'm going to do these 3 things regularly. How do you get ready to never be able to run a marathon? Well, I'm going to do these 3 things every day and I will never be able to run a marathon. You'll have to do it, But I sat there and I said, 0 to 10, how you doing to listening, thinking, Jonathan? And I'm like, 0, maybe -5. So I thought, well, start over. And I looked at her, I said, how's your day going? And she says something and talks for 4 minutes. And I thought, well, that was for half a second, I was a 10. And then I was back down to like a 1, and this is sort of what I don't always do it this way, but just to make it simple, like, how do you practice something? And I mean, if you practice listening to pick your kid, say, I want to have a really good, at least 1 or 2 minutes worth of really engaged conversation today with one of my kids. And then after, go, how'd it go? How'd it go? Game changer. And it's crazy how simple it is, right? I don't know, Dori, I want complicated things because then I don't have to do them.
I get that.
Like,
Okay.
let me read the next book. It's 400 pages and I'll take notes and then I'll never do anything. That'll be great. And then I'll get the next book and I'll have a stack of them. I mean, Martin Luther King Jr. was a pretty good speaker. In the heat of the civil rights movement, he would give 500 or 600 live talks a year. And they said, the people that knew him well said he would take a little piece of a speech and you'd hear him practicing it, and he'd practice it even just one-on-one with people. So when he did the mountaintop, when he did the I Have a Dream speech in Washington, D.C., it was probably almost 200 times that he had given that with a live audience before that moment. So it wasn't like, I put it this way, who are you becoming is really about pick something you're working on and then like say, how's it really going? Very regularly. The more you do that, progress. Massive progress. But it's not a five. Yeah. What?
Oh, no. I was going to say, what if you're a parent who's listening right now and you're saying, I don't really know if I'm listening. Like, how do I even assess if I'm making progress or if I'm really, I mean, I know lots of people who want to listen better.
Mm.
Do they really know when they are, or do they know when they're just trying? So do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, several things. I would say one, if the person you're talking with is thrilled to continue talking, there's a pretty good chance you're actually listening well. And if they shut down, change your approach, and maybe you need 3 or 4 better questions to keep the conversation going or to make it more meaningful. With the woman on the plane, I started thinking, I can only pretend so well. And I honestly started thinking this. And I said, I started thinking, like, what's a topic that I would actually love hearing her talk about? And I thought, well, she had told me that she was traveling to visit grandkids and whatever. So I said, my kids are this age. And I said, when your kids were that age, what do you now wish you knew when your kids were the age that my kids are? And then like all of a sudden, I put it on a topic where I was interested and she was interested. So I didn't have to pretend. Most of us have a better idea of when we're pretending than when we're not.
And our kids know. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
they're like truth detectors, right? You're half involved, half engaged in their conversation or with their, even their day.
Mm.
And they know right away that you're not being there present with them. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of why I asked that, because I think it's hard. It's hard for parents, especially busy families that are
Yeah.
just going all the time, to really truly be authentic and balance. Hey, I want to be the perfect parent on top of that. Like it's
Oh, yeah. Oh,
hard.
yeah. Yeah. Another really big one for parents, especially, is time together facing in the same direction. For example, ski lift time, like chairlift time, or road trips just with one of your kids. Because when I'm looking at, I have two teenagers, once in a while they will say something where my face, my body language immediately gives me away. It's like they'll say something, and if I'm looking at them, my whole face will be like, "Your friend said what?" Right? Or who? But when we're facing the same direction, we miss that. And so often they'll keep telling you things, and so time like that, figure out things. I was telling a young dad recently, I said, when your kids are really little, figure out little things that you can do always, like just regularly. Maybe it's taking a hike together we got season passes to a little tiny local ski mountain when my kids were little. And we'd be like, let's see if we can hit the slopes 20 times this year, even if it's only an hour or two each time. And that's what we did. And it was just like, we're going to do at least 2 this week, and little things where you can both look forward to it. And kids need something they can count on. They need so few parents have dinner together with their kids. They need something, even if it's like, what we're going to do? We're going to do from now on, we're doing Taco Tuesday every Tuesday. We're going to make homemade pizza once a week, or once a month, if once a week seems crazy, but just something. We'll take a recipe from one of my grandparents and like bake something. And none of us are bakers in my family, but we're like, we could probably figure it out. It's written down. We're like, let's bake, we'll eat half the batter raw. We just made a homemade apple kuchen, like a German apple cake a couple days ago. We picked some apples but little things that can be a rhythm that are just time together with nothing else going on.
Yeah. You had mentioned when we talked before that you had a day that your daughter, it kind of shaped your daughter. And it was called Brave and Daring Day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so brilliant because I think so many times, like when we think of routines as like bad, and boring and not very, like it sets you in like stone. You have to do these things. I think this sounded so fun. So can you tell me about that? And did it affect your daughter long term?
Oh, dramatically it did. Yes, yes. So my oldest daughter was about 5, and I was traveling a ton for work. I write books. I'm writing book number 5 now. And I get to do keynotes and leadership work all over the world. And I was traveling too much, but on one of my trips, I was gone for probably 8 days. And it was a Friday night and I'm flying home. And I was thinking in the plane, I'm like, I don't get enough time with my kids. I want to make it meaningful. And then I started thinking, and this is such a true thought, this is worth writing down. The quality of our lives hinges on the quality of the questions we pursue. And so many of us pursue accidental questions, mediocre questions, yesterday questions. We pursue questions like, what's the easiest way to get through this questions? But I started playing on that flight with this question of, if my kids only learn one thing from growing up in our house, what would I love it to be? And I think so few people are intentional enough about that. And I started thinking like, I think it would be courage. I would like them to have courage. And then I'm flying home, right? And I kind of was starting to piece together this "who are you becoming" idea a little better, and realizing that you needed to pick something and then work on it regularly. That's it. That's it. And I said, well, how would you practice getting better at courage? So that the next morning I'm sitting down, my daughter's 5, and I think we're having waffles. And I said, Ella, her name's Ella. I said, Ella, we're going to do Brave and Daring Day. You know, she's 5. So she's looking at me like, yeah. You know, and then like, I remember seeing her face shift to like, what does that mean? You know, I don't know how she asked it, but it was kind of like, what is Brave and Daring Day? And I didn't really have it mapped out. I just knew that we should do things that it takes courage to do. So I told her that. I said, we're going to do things that are like, they're maybe they feel a little scary. It takes some courage. You have to be brave and daring to do them. And immediately Ella got this look on her face, like, you know, you can almost see the little, remember the cartoons, like the little horns pop out of her head. Or when she says, Daddy, can I climb that thing at the playground that mommy won't let me climb? I'm like, and you know, in my head, I'm thinking, the first thing we do on Brave and Daring Day cannot be chicken out, right? Like I can't. So no, not that. Something. And I'm about to say sure or probably, and Ella looks at me and she says, "We don't have to tell mom." So now I was like, "This is it. This is perfect. 2 birds, 1 stone." Right? We'll practice courage and lying to your. Like this is gonna be beautiful. You know, so, I mean, we ended up writing down, and she likes to draw. So she drew pictures. She's like, things I would have to have courage to do. Ask that one friend, whatever. I think she drew pictures of a few things. And then we did probably 6 of them on that first day, you know, and that's it, including climb that thing at the playground, you know, and it was not part of the playground. It was actually, you know, it was this a spot where there was a bench for parents to sit, and there was this trellis or something, pergola above it that was maybe 13 feet high, you know, and there wasn't a way to climb it. But and some of your audience can see, I think, but there was a little tree nearby, and she's climbing that tree almost like upside down, like a sloth, because the branches are swinging over this pergola. And I'm watching, and I'm thinking like, yeah, she's only 13, 14 feet up, and she's 5. This is going great. Not everyone else in the playground was thinking we should practice courage. And, you know, she ends up kind of swinging on the branch and landing on top of the pergola, and she is pumped. You know, and every parent I meet wants their kids to have confidence. You do not build, and we all know this, I think, but we don't necessarily do it. You don't build confidence by telling your kid that something that's not amazing is. Like, they see right through that. But when they do something today that yesterday they didn't think they can do, it's lasting. I mean, that's real confidence. And when they do something today that yesterday they didn't think you thought they could do, game changer. You know, she's on top of this thing, and she's like top of the world. And then this probably 8 or 9-year-old kid comes running over to me, and I don't know who he is. He says, how did she get up there? Did you help her get up there? Could you help me get up there? Can I go up there? You know, and I don't know who the kid is. I'm looking at him like thinking, climb it. Go ahead. You know, climb the tree. And I didn't say anything to him because his mother came over, and she actually put her arms around him, you know, like, and
Okay.
she said, remember, you're afraid of heights. See, if you and I don't pick up a pillar, a thing that, who are you becoming? I'm going to get better at brave and daring. I'm going to get better at courage. Someone else probably did already for us. And someone else, and it's probably, we didn't decide that was but someone else is helping us get better at something. And this mother was helping her son to be better at being afraid of life. You know, and I say this with sort of a smile, but sort of, if I don't sit down and say, I want to help my kid think that they can conquer things, how do I do that? The quality of our lives hinges on the quality of the questions we pursue. I don't think she ever sat down and said, I want my kid to be afraid of everything. But I think she had a question in her mind saying, how do I make sure the world is perfectly safe? You know, how do I make sure that he never skins his knee? And I don't know that she picked the question, but it's a challenge I give to all of the parents that are with us today. Pick one thing and practice it. You know, and for a lot of us, I need to practice it too. You know, one year, my daughter, I mean, how did it affect her? So it was probably a couple of years of doing this, and we wouldn't do it every Saturday. We'd do it every now and then, probably once a month. We'd say, should we do Brave and Daring Day this weekend? And she'd say, yeah, let's do it. And eventually she loved it. And then one day, a couple of years into it, she said, my wife Dominica said, was it Brave and Daring Day today? And Ella goes, yeah. And my wife says, what does Brave and Daring Day mean when it's dinner time? And Ella was like, she's like, probably I have to try some food I never tried before.
Mhm.
I think she was 7 or 8 years old. So Ella decided Thursday would be try something Thursday. And at dinner every Thursday, it'd be, so my wife started bringing, she's like, oh, let's try scallops. Let's try, whatever, curry sauce or something. And it was like, okay. And eventually my little daughter, Maya, who's 4 years younger, she would say, Daddy, is it Thursday? Is it Thursday? And I'd say, Maya, it's almost Thursday. It's Friday. So we only have 6 more days. We're getting there. And then Maya would say, if you, when you go to the store, can you bring home a thing of ice cream that I haven't tried yet? Because Maya was like, if I'm going to try something Thursday, it's going to be a flavor of ice cream.
Give me something I like already. Yeah.
Exactly. But game changer. That my oldest daughter is 18 now, about to turn 19, and she's starting her own business. Like, she is one of the most courageous people you'll ever meet. And I would say a big part of it is practicing courage now and then. Because for most of the world, we practice the opposite. We spend a lot of time practicing the opposite of courage. Yeah.
You think, is there because you've talked to lots of leaders who also happen to be parents,
Mm.
do you feel like there's a specific skill or trait that you feel like they really struggle helping their kids achieve? I mean, we're talking about courage. That's one thing. Are there other spots that you see parents really struggling?
Yeah, really good question. Yes. A lot of kids grow up without a lot of clarity around, like, what am I supposed to do with my life? I started running an entrepreneur camp when my oldest daughter was 4, and we'd had probably 1,000 kids go through versions of this entrepreneur camp. And I see over and over and over again with teenagers that they don't really have something that they're excited to be chasing. And if you're not chasing something, someone else will give you something to do with your life. And I think a lot of parents struggle to, I see over and over again that parents want to keep their kids good busy. If you help your kid find something they're totally into, they'll get good busy around that. They tend to. It's definitely a challenge today, no question. You probably know the book, The Anxious Generation, that's pretty recent. There's a lot of distractions for kids today. And that's a big one. That's a big one. If my kid has some clarity, if they have some drive, some motivation, something they're excited about.
I feel like a lot of parents try to give that to their kids too, and then it becomes this battle.
Oh, yeah.
It's a battle of will because their kids aren't really that interested, like you said, but the parent is trying to fill the plate and they're going to all the things and everybody's hating it. And then that just causes so much friction in the whole family. And that again, just makes everyone not talk, right? I mean, because we're all mad and frustrated and following the wrong thing. So is there a way that you've experienced that really helps people get the clarity of what they're really looking for?
I wish it was an ABC thing. I don't know that it is. In our entrepreneur camps, we always do these overlapping circles of talents and passions, 2 circles, and then the third one of a way you can serve within those, or the S could stand for cash flow too, the dollar sign. Like, would people pay you for that? Yeah, because I have a passion for, let's say, baseball. My talent for baseball doesn't quite overlap enough to the point where anyone would pay me to play baseball. Right. But I could take that passion for baseball and say, well, I have a talent for also coordinating things, and people might pay me to coordinate something connected with baseball. Like, I know a woman whose company does trips to sporting events all over the country, and her company coordinates these things. And she's got a passion for some sporting things, and her talent is more on the coordinating than it is on the playing. And so that can help those overlapping circles. Depends a lot on the age of the kids. Another one that I absolutely love is the power of stories. I spent some time with Patch Adams. We're doing a research on a book on servant leadership, and I would say parenting and servant leadership should be identical concepts. But Patch Adams told me something over and over again over the course of maybe a 4-hour conversation. He said, "Tell me who your role models are, and I'll tell you what kind of a person you're becoming." And he said it, like I said, over and over again in many contexts. He said, if you're a parent, tell me who your role models are as a parent. If you're a parent, tell me who the role models are for your kids, and I'll tell you where they're headed in life. And that goes back to the power of stories. Reading little, maybe tiny biographies, or telling little pieces of a story to your kids, or helping them experience a story of someone where they say, "That's amazing." Where they will repeat it back to you 3 months or a year or 3 years later. "Remember that guy you were talking about?" And as a parent, I don't think I can overemphasize this. I was in a leadership program very early in my career. One of my mentors said, "Jonathan, if people," he said, if people don't quote you, they haven't heard you." And he said, until they're quoting you, they haven't really heard you. And as a parent, that's so true. So if your kids aren't saying something, and it might mean you take some story that you love, like Steve Jobs would always say, don't waste your life living someone else's. Don't waste your life doing what someone else could do. I don't need Steve Jobs' whole story, but if I help my kids get that piece of his story, that like when he came back to Apple, they gave him 13 years vacation. The boards fired him, right? And when he came back, he said, "We're working on like 100 things." No, he said, we're chasing like 100 rabbits. He said, "We're going to make 4 things and that's it. But we're going to make 4 things that are incredible." And he lived this idea of don't waste your life doing what somebody else could do. Only do what only you could do. You could phrase it that way. By the way, I know somebody is listening and thinking like, but I'm not Steve Jobs. But no one else can be dad to your kids. No one else. No one else can be mom to your kids. So help them see one little story where they go, "Oh, that's kind of cool that he did that. That's really neat that he did that. That's really neat that she did that." So the power of stories is incredible.
Yeah. Well, I'm right there with you is in my area of expertise of the
Yeah.
children's book.
Yes. Yeah.
And actually I was going to ask you, and this is probably going to be kind of tricky. If you were to take one of your core parenting lessons or your own experiences and put it into a story, what lesson would you want kids to read over and over again?
Oh, wow. Wow. It's a different one than what we've talked about so far. Um,
Okay.
yeah. And in my book, Who Are You Becoming? There's a chapter that my 7th grade teacher really kind of wrote, or she didn't write it, she lived it. And I call the chapter Happen to the World. And so this is 7th grade, and how cool are 7th graders, 12-year-olds. They know everything, so I had this teacher, Mrs. Mail. She called herself Mother Mail. She's like, "Mother Mail, it's Mother Mail." And I had her right after lunch. So when you're 12, right after lunch, you're kind of like, the day's almost done. And I just ate. Can I just sit here quietly in peace? But she did not allow that. Like, she happened to the world, and let me put it this way. She had in her back pocket like 100 different little things that she could do that would shift the whole engagement of the room. And we were studying how living things are classified. And she gets up in front of the room and she would pretend like she just happened on the idea. And you're like, "Mrs. Mail, you probably did this 30 times, in the last couple of years." But she goes, "Oh, today, today we're gonna dig into how living things are classified." And she would bring so much energy and excitement that you're like, "Oh, okay, I guess that's probably good." But still, 7th grade, right after lunch, you're like, "Yeah, yep, I'm glad you're excited, Mrs. Mail." Then she went like this. She went, "Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. And she starts doing this whole dance, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. And then, so we start leaning forward a little bit like, all right, pretty good. And she goes, oh, I'll take requests. Who should I sing it like or dance it like? And like somebody's like, Michael Jackson. She's like, she does this Michael Jackson thing and she's moonwalking in the room. And like at this point, seventh graders, real cool, right? Right after lunch. But we're like, you're killing it. You're killing it. Yeah. Somebody's like, do it like Run DMC. Do it like, I can't remember all the names of the groups. But people were like, do it like, the whatever, Bon Jovi or something, and she's just taking, we're like, do it like a hula dancer. Kingdom, class. We're into it and we're hearing it. And then she pauses and she does the same thing where she pretends like, why don't we do the dance together? Everybody stand up with me, and immediately the whole room is like, I remember one person near me is like, do not make eye contact with the woman. Some kids who had never opened the textbook or opening the book and they're like, what page are we on with the lesson? Pretending to read in the lessons. And she's like, no, stand up. She's like, okay, you can use a prop if you want. She's like, you can even pick up your chair or your desk if you want and do the dance with me. So at that point, we're like, yeah, I can do that. All right. So we stand up and we're like, kingdom, species, kingdom. People are like banging their books and, we're all looking back to see if anybody we know is going to walk by the classroom, or if someone's going to come and take Mrs. Mail away, like you've done enough teaching. And then she says, why don't we do the Congo line? And we do the kingdom, phylum, class, order dance through the whole classroom. Now, we had a test, I don't know, a couple weeks later. How many people do you think got that question wrong of what are the classifications of living things?
Well, I hope nobody got it wrong.
Nobody. And you could tell when they got there because they'd be like,
dancing.
They'd be tapping or like, nobody got it wrong. Over and over again, Mrs. Mail had almost every student in her class got A's, not just A's, but like close to 100 on almost every quiz, test. And not all of her peers liked her. The school actually looked into how she taught because they thought maybe she's spoon feeding them. Maybe she's teaching to the test. Maybe she's like, giving them sort of like the answers. And it turned out that she was covering 50% more than was required most years. And her students remembered all the stuff that she covered years and years. Like I could walk you through the mitochondria and I could walk you through the periodic table and why things are where they are, and she happened to the world, and I use an equation. It's really simple. It says S+R equals O. O is outcome. S is like the situation or the story or the scenario or the students in this case. And the R is how I respond to that. And Mrs. Mail, her S+R equals O was, I want an outcome of kids who actually really like learning. I want an outcome where kids like look forward to my class. I want an outcome where they understand it. They're happy to ask questions. They're having a good time. They're energetic. They're not bored out of their minds. And she said, okay, that's the outcome I'd love. But the students, the situation, the S is, well, they're 12. They're seventh grade. It's right after lunch. They've got a lot of distractions, but Mrs. Mail would never have said, I could have engaged kids if the parents would have done something differently. Or if the budget were different, or if the superintendent or the school district or the board of education or if they didn't have phones, then I could actually reach these kids. Mrs. Mail would never say those things. And I would make this into a children's book, but also a lot of parents. I mean, I struggle with it. Often I'm like, the world is doing stuff, right? I mean, think about it. Happen to the world versus let social media happen to you. How many mornings have you started the morning and you let somebody else's post or whatever, or their comment or their reply to your email or text happen to you versus you happening to the world? And that's, Brave and Daring Day was my first day, but Happen to the World was kind of like, it wasn't far after. I'm like, we're going to get better at happening to the world. And I started teaching my daughters when they were pretty young. I'm like, no one makes you feel a certain way. And they looked at me like, yeah, when he did that, it made me feel really sad. I'm like, no, actually, like no one is in charge of your emotional state. And they looked at me like, but everybody says it. I'm like, right, that's nice. But you could pretend they didn't say anything, right? You have a lot of option between here and there. I got in trouble with that one, Dori. I shouldn't even have said it out loud. But I got in trouble with that one more than once.
I think it's so true though, because I think we're quick to defer the responsibility of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the outcome, I love that. I'm just thinking like you gave us a great example of in the classroom, but I'm also thinking in your family's house, where the outcomes that you want.
Yeah.
In work, like you working with the business people on the same concept, I'm sure. Like it's a huge thing, but you're right. Like you're really quick to get buried by everything environmental on the outside of us
Oh,
and then,
yeah.
stay on top of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'll just say a young person I know in my life who's like probably made every choice that you would probably want a person that age not to make. Probably make every one of those probably 20 times in a row in the direction you're like, oh no, oh no, oh no. No, but he'll never do that again. Oh, he did it twice. Okay. And let's pretend hypothetically that maybe I'm his uncle, let's say. I could sit there and say, wow, wonder if he'll ever change, right? Or I could say S+R=O. If I wanted to really help this person, and let's pretend, and we could all do this, and I challenge everyone listening to think about this for a couple seconds. Pick one relationship that you have in your life that's not perfect, right? Because we all have one, right? Maybe it's awful, or maybe it's okay, but it's not perfect. And then pretend S+R=O. Pretend that person is they're not about to change anything. Like if the relationship is going to be better in any way, let's pretend it's 100% up to you to change something, right? Because this person I'm talking about, hypothetically, Uncle me, I could say, well, or I could say, well, if I want to strengthen the relationship, because most likely I can't help him unless he knows that, hey, he's on my side, like he wants what's best for me, and I can't get there unless like we spend some time together. And let's say hypothetically, pretend that he might have a quad. And if I went for a ride on the quad with him a couple times, especially if I went on the back and trusted him to drive, that it would really make a big impact on our relationship. And then I could sit there and say, I'm not willing to do that. Okay. But what else is he into that I'm willing to spend some time? Like, where can I pretend you're 100% responsible? I don't care what the relationship is, but somewhere in your life, there's a coworker, there's a friend, there's a niece, a nephew, one of your own kids, there's your spouse, there's your ex-spouse, there's somebody that the relationship it's not what you pretend no one else is going to change but you, and then say, all right, where do I go? Happen to the world. Take Mrs. Mail and go, all right, I'm not sure what's going to work, but I know what's been happening isn't really amazing. And then that's where the Brave and Daring Day comes back, right? Because you're like, well, here's 3 things I could do.
Well, maybe if you follow it up with try something Thursday, it'll work out better too.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah.
I love that. This is awesome. And I think you have so many pieces of information that really are super powerful. So I do have one more question, but Jonathan, before we get to that one question, can you tell our listeners how they can find you and what upcoming events or any programs that we should be watching for from you or books?
Sure. Yeah. I'm easy to find. myname.com, jonathanfanning.com. We do a lot of kind of who are you becoming challenges. So if you go on our website and put in anywhere you want, there's lots of places. We put you into a little challenge usually that you'll have a lot of fun with. And a lot of them, they all affect you, period. They all affect, there's always a gap between who I am and who I could be. There's always going to be a gap, but it's nice when we can close it to some degree in some pocket of our life. So it's easy to find me, jonathanfanning.com. And then Yeah, upcoming, we've been doing a really intriguing interview series with servant leaders. With what we've asked about 2,000 people all over the world. Is there someone you know who you'd consider a deeply authentic servant leader? And then when we start getting, there's a whole process to it, but when we start getting the same person over and over again, then we schedule an interview. And we've done over 100 interviews now. And part of it will turn into a book. Part of it will turn into probably like a servant leader boot camp. And then part of it we're going to find some ways to help parents with that. Because Dori, I meet so many parents who are trying to figure out, okay, how do I want the best for my kids, but I'm not always sure how to navigate that with this specific kid in this set of circumstances, and I don't need, like I said, the 500-page book. I just need kind of like an idea of how to talk about it right here and right now, and I also meet a lot of parents, Dory, who they think, well, I did these 5 dumb things, therefore I have to let my own kids do these 5 dumb things, and it's like in certain areas, we would never do that. Like, let's say you dug yourself a financial hole big time, and one of your kids is like, I'm getting a credit card. You'd be like, no, you're not. But in other areas, we seem to be like, oh, who am I? And we want to give parents courage to not only love, but also to lead. Because in these interview story with servant leaders, I would say probably 95% of them have talked about things they learned from a parent and things they learned in being a parent. And a lot of these people are CEOs of you'd know some of the names where you'd be like, and they said, my mother, without her, I'm not who I am. And they'll tell you about some time when mom called them out, or sometime when mom was like, saw something that the kid didn't see, So your role is unbelievably important as a parent.
Awesome. I love that we can look forward to that. And they'll find out information on your website about that too.
True. Yeah. Yes. Mhm.
Awesome. Okay, you ready for the last question, Jonathan?
I guess so.
We could probably go for another 2 hours, but what is one way that our listeners could truly be more authentic within their family this week? One thing.
There's a question I love to ask. Actually, there's a few, but I'm going to give you one. I'm going to give you 2 of them, if that's okay. One of them is 10 years from now, what will I wish I had done today? And 10 years from now, what will you wish you had fitted to this week? And that goes with the second question. And the second question is, and it's a simple one, but you have to spend time with it. It's just, how can I make this more meaningful and more memorable? And what I mean by this is whatever this is going on in your life. Like I just got back from a family trip. 13 of us went to Ireland. And our last night in Ireland, my older daughter, brave and daring, she's like, is there a cliff we could jump off into the ocean? And in the Galway Bay, right on the west coast of Ireland, there is a diving platform that is 10 meters, so 33 or so feet above the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, the Galway Bay. And the water's like 62 degrees because it's just not that hot in Ireland. And she's like, could we go there? And I thought, well, how can I make this more meaningful and more memorable? Right. You as a parent, you spend time with that question, or those 2, 10 years from now, what will I wish I had done today? You find yourself doing more. And so often they're little tiny things. I'm like, yeah, sure. It's a 15-minute drive from where we're staying. No one else in the whole family was interested in going. And I'm like, I'll go with you. And then she's like, all right, you jumping with me? And this is where better questions sometimes will get you uncomfortable. Like, yeah, I guess I'm going to jump with you. So we had a friend video us and, like somebody, actually some Irish kid, actually not a friend, some Irish kid were like, can you video this? And, sure. And, we both go 33 feet up. And I'm like, it's pretty deep. It's pretty far down there. All right. Ella's like 3, 2, 1. How can I, 10 years from now, what will I wish I had done today? And how can I make this more meaningful and more memorable?
That's awesome. Is your video on your website?
Oh yeah, well, lots of videos are on it. Yeah, yeah. Well, that clip, not yet. It will be. It will
Okay.
be.
Okay.
Yes, it will be. Yep.
We have to check that out because I want to see this. That's awesome. You have given us so much great information, Jonathan. I just thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Dory. Thanks for what you do. I love that you do this, the podcast and the books, and it's amazing to have good people to do life with. And we've only known each other a little bit, but enough to know that you're a good person to do life with.
Thank you. That is such a compliment.